great. It's fucking... I'll jump in and say something in a second. It's always good because it's like conversations like this where you get the rawity of people. So why did you know it was bad but still do it? Move from Melbourne here for the guy. Why'd you do it?
I think it was still for me, I had a lot of trauma that I was holding on to. And, historically because of my childhood, I've been a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I tended to go into relationships to try and help others, right? Like to try and fix others, right? And at the detriment, I think, of myself. So I think if I knew it is because I went against my intuition. And I think as human beings, sometimes we know intuitively what's right for us, but we don't listen to it. And sometimes it's because we can't let go.
Yeah.
And we're not ready to face our shit.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah. And how long were you with him when you got here?
Only 6 months. And then because COVID hits 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
Like, so I moved to Perth.
And then you're lucky.
And I skipped out. Yeah.
Oh, you're lucky, yeah.
Yeah. And then 6 weeks later, COVID hit. So, and I think I just knew that it wasn't right, and I just started detaching and really started going within. And I've always been a very spiritual person. Yeah. Like I've always been big into, astrology and loving my tarot cards, and I've done it for 10 years. Right? So it was always me at my core. And then I just decided, you know what, I've had enough of, because relationships are a mirror, right?
Yep.
Like what we deal with, not just in our intimate relationships, it's also in friendships. And they say you're the closest people to you, the 5 people closest to you are a mirror and a reflection of you.
Isn't it amazing? Because it's also the same thing, the people closest to you, or your circle, say you'll always turn out but surround yourself with 9 millionaires, you'll be the 10th.
True.
Isn't that interesting that you've got the 5 people you're closest to are the ones that are a reflection of yourself? That's interesting. That's very interesting.
It is.
So when you moved here and you realised after 6 months, you're like, I'm done. How did you find it easy to just what's the word? To kind of immerse yourself within the culture in Perth of find the spiritual community, or what?
I didn't find it easy, to be honest. I think, I felt really deregulated. I felt lost. Yeah. But I think when we're going on a journey of healing, it forces you to look at your shit. Yeah. And, we, as human beings, sometimes we don't want to feel uncomfortable. And that's why things like addictions come into play, or, whether it's porn addiction, like we've been, speaking about, or, addicted to validation, or any of, those things. And I think for me, I recognized certain behaviors in myself. And I think it was, as cheesy as this sounds, I think it was just my turn to be awakened. I remember sitting with a coach / therapist, and she said, why is it now, Kate? What is it now? And I'm just it's like those moments where you have rose-colored glasses on, and you take it off, and you just can't unsee again. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. And once you can't unsee, there's no turning back from that. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. I like that. And when was that? So I'd say 5 years ago now.
So it was 5 years ago? Around the same?
Almost 5, yeah.
Wow. And is that what got you into what you do now?
Yeah, I guess that's the kind of the catalyst for it, right? I think, so now my business is called Human by Design. Yeah. Not to be mixed up with human design. So I have to maybe, look at the marketing in that. And I knew that anyway, and I love human design. Yeah. So if we're talking about human design, I'm a manifesting generator 6/2. But the purpose of choosing that name for me was very intentional, because so I work with entrepreneurs and leaders, right? Yeah. So my background, in the corporate world in the last kind of I guess, being in Perth and then in Melbourne was working with entrepreneurs and leaders to help them with a lot of growth strategies, work with a lot of VCs, really high achievers, sometimes early stage startups, sometimes, businesses that are, people of multi-million dollar businesses, right?
Yeah.
And me having that background and an awakening, I guess, of my own trauma, I think I've always been, naturally very intuitive, but I didn't listen to it, right? And I think we've probably all had those moments, right? So the catalyst, I guess, was then, for me to go on my own self-development journey. And I started doing some coaching courses. I started doing more therapeutic courses and doing more courses on like mindfulness and I guess really to elevate, where I was, right? Because I think if you're going to coach people, and I hate to use that word coach because I feel like it's oversaturated, people want to know your story, and I think they also want to understand that you've lived an experience. Because you can do all the theory in the world, but if you haven't lived through it, then how are you then going to be able to teach other people?
Couldn't agree more.
Right? So for me, I use different types of modalities. So I've done very forward-thinking, solutions-focused coaching, which has worked really well for entrepreneurs. Like obviously you're an entrepreneur, you're always forward-thinking, wanting to do the next best thing. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs, I guess when I was working with them from a business perspective, I really saw a need for support in that space. So if you think about an athlete, right, and to be the best at what you do as an athlete, so whether you're an AFL player, you're a famous tennis player, you've got a whole team around you. So you've got physios, you've got psychologists, you've got massage therapy, you've got everything, right? With an entrepreneur, when you're an entrepreneur, you have got yourself a lot of the time. And it's as much as it's glorified on social media, whether it's Instagram or whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, like whatever network you're using, it's a fucking lonely journey. So me kind of seeing that need for support, the support's really across burnout, like imposter syndrome and confidence. Even some of the most successful entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, like they've had their bad days. We just don't see it, right? So all of those kind of elements, anxiety, stress management, you think about, your business and you wanting to expand and maybe one day you'll bring people into your company, right? Like it's all about team cohesion and how you're going to work together to improve like productivity. So all of that in itself incorporates, I guess, a very holistic way of me working with them in terms of depending on how deep they want to go. If that makes sense.
It does. And I think that's what everyone misses these days is everyone tries to get the entrepreneurial lifestyle from what they see on social media, but they just try to raw dog it. And most of them are the ones that aren't doing the work either. Because there's so much comes from actually going inside to be able to understand more of who you are, to be able to help everyone else. And that's what I found with what I'm doing, like going from stripping, OnlyFans, all that sort of stuff, to then switching and having a full rebrand to what I do now. And the amount of people that are like, oh my God, this suits you so much. Like it's definitely you. And it's the first thing because I've been able to do that work. Like I said, the level of meditation that I can do now is ridiculous. Can
I ask what the catalyst was for your
my shift.
Light bulb moment and your shift in now doing what you're doing?
So I originally stopped stripping when I was in the UK. So just before COVID. I remember we had the COVID warning of everything shutting down and shows stopping. And we were like, this is probably going to be the last show for a while. And I was like, sweet, I might focus on some different things. So I was trying to work out what the fuck to do. Then I just moved into coaching. So I was online coach, like a high-end coach for about 2 years.
As in you had a coach?
No, I had many coaches. Like I had my bodybuilding coaches. I mentors. I had all sorts. It was great. Like, I was high end, like I was at $800 a month per client, which was great. And I worked with some really amazing people, but I hated me putting the work into someone and them not doing the work. That really just drove me nuts. I could put the plan in, the diet in, get them, I say, your check-in's this date, this is what you have to do. Wouldn't do it. And these people were just like, they had the money to burn, but it was just, they wouldn't do it. And my brain was like, it was that whole imposter syndrome moment where it was like, you aren't doing the work. Oh my God, you're not getting the results. That's my fault. I'm a fuck up. I'm a terrible coach.
So you blamed yourself.
Oh yeah. I had to fight with that for so long. And it took me a bit to realize, it's like, you know what? It's actually not me. But I also...
Can I ask, has that been like a behavior that you've exhibited in other areas of your life? Like that whole sort of blame, like
the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and self-blame. If things don't go, if it's to do with your business or something like that, if it doesn't go to right, would you blame?
Yeah, it was. Because it was easier for me to do it myself than other people to do it. And that was one thing in the army, I used to do all the time. It was like, I'd see people take their time and I'm like, I may as well do it. And it still happens today, but not to the extent of what it was. And I'm very aware of it. So I'm like, if I am doing something, it's like, I'm not punishing myself for having that moment. It's just like, I'm doing it just because I want to do it. It's not doing it because like I need to pick up slack somewhere else because of someone else. So I was doing the coaching, and then I started performing again for about 6 to 8 months, because they started a show down in Brighton, which was great. Although the club we were working in was like a sweat box. It was horrible, disgusting. But then I was going through a divorce at this time as well, and I was also competing.
I'm learning so much about you today. I love it.
Oh yeah, there's so much. So I was going through a divorce. I was competing. I just got my pro card. I was prepping we were slowly splitting up at that point in time. Like, I tried to save the marriage and spend £12,000 on an apartment in Wembley to try to move out of the energy to be able to try to save it, and it just didn't work. But expensive lesson. But as I was competing, I just got a pro card. I did 3 pro shows. I was trying to work out what to do with my fucking life. And I was like, I'm just going to go back to Oz, because the UK didn't feel like home anymore. Like, I've got all my friends there. That was 10 solid years of everything. Like, I was 24 when I moved there. It was 2013, end of 2013 when I went there.
Interesting, because then that's when I moved back. Because
really?
I'd spent 3.5 years out there, and then I'd moved back. I moved back to Brisbane as well. So
Wow. So did you go to Greenwich? Back to Greenwich, or did you?
So I lived in Lewisham.
Yeah, I know Lewisham. Yeah.
Because in the UK, it's like you go down like 2 kilometres, and the accent changes, and so does the whole demographic and all of that stuff, right? So yes, I couldn't afford to live in Greenwich at the time, but it was very close. Yeah, it's
still expensive.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous there. I was trying to sort out what was going on. I ended up moving out of that apartment and moving into a 1-bedroom. No, sorry, I was renting a bedroom in Finsbury Park for £950 a month.
Oh my goodness!
In a 5-bedroom house. Yeah, it was disgusting. I loved it. He took me in. It was a mate's cousin. Like, it was great, and he loved bodybuilding as well. So me and him got along like a house on fire. But yeah, I was like, I need to do something.
Change, yeah.
Yeah. So I convinced my best mate to move with me, because he started stripping with me about a year or 2 after I'd started with those guys, and we both went separate ways, and he went to a different company, and then I hadn't seen him in about 2 years, and we had the same company managing our online coaching platform, and I was actually in the office one day, and I get this bear hug from behind. And I turned around and I saw Zach, and I was like, fuck, I haven't seen you in ages. And then he went off for a meeting with his manager. And I was looking at him. I just had this feeling of like, I've seen you today for a reason. We're going to do some work together. And next, we started filming coaching content together. I actually got him into OnlyFans, because I started OnlyFans back in 2017 when it was just starting to kind of come up. So I got him into OnlyFans, and he got me back into OnlyFans because I just opened my account one day and there was like 2,000 US sitting in there, and I was like, my God, I got some money.
Like I can make some money with this.
Yeah. So I started reselling old content, and I was making, I think that first 2 months I made almost 8,000 US just reselling old content.
So for you, what was the catalyst, I guess, to change, to move away from that lifestyle?
Oh yeah, that's where we got to.
Yeah. That's all right. I'll keep this structured. I've got my notes.
Thank you. There's that tangent.
That's all right.
No,
So what was like for you? You know, it's. I mean, we know we're living obviously in an online world now where we can make quick
money,
quick
very
buck,
quick
right?
money, yeah.
But I guess I kind of want to understand, like, what was the catalyst for change for you, and secondly, what did you kind of observe? How did it affect your mental state?
Okay.
So there's two questions there.
Okay, so it actually started. So when we came back, I managed to get a job with Magic Men. So me and Zach started performing with Magic Men here in Australia.
Yeah.
And we were promised the world. We were promised the Melbourne wages, which these guys could make 4 to 6 grand in a weekend doing privates. And we were promised that. We weren't told that was Melbourne. We were told that's just what the boys are earning.
Yeah.
So we came over thinking, fuck yeah, we're going to be earning this kind of money. Didn't happen. Did not happen at all. And the boss, I didn't like him. He was a prick. Absolute prick. But it was just like we got home. I live with mum and dad. We lived with mum and dad for a bit, and the energy was very heavy, like very, very heavy there. And my mate then kind of met some girl. She's, what was it? He's 30. She's 42.
It's okay.
Yeah, there's no. I'm not here against it, but it was like we'd been there for 3 weeks. And then next, he'd met this girl in the gym.
Moving very quickly, you mean?
Very quickly.
Yeah.
And basically she was like, oh, you can stay at my house. So then he basically upped and left and spent time at her house and left me in this house with mum and dad. And I'm like, I love them. Love those guys. But I'm like, the energy was just so heavy because there's a lot of trauma from both of those sides.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
And that's
what I'm looking for in you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand their...
Yeah, well, that was it. So, because my childhood was great. I had a good upbringing, but I think there are bits and pieces that I've started seeing as I've got older, and I've dived into doing this sort of stuff that I can then see the generational stuff.
Yes, and I think the thing is as well, even with like a lot of the clients that I work with, we don't have to. So there's your different traumas, right? So there's your big, what they call your big T traumas, where you've been domestically abused, sexually abused, grief, loss, war, all of those things. And then you've got your second T traumas. And when I say like your second T traumas, I don't mean that like it's one's greater than the other, right? Because it can affect you differently, right? But I think what tends to happen is that people, and I see a lot of this with the people that I coach, because part of my brand is that your business challenges and your personal challenges aren't separate.
Yep.
So if you think about, your journey as an entrepreneur, and, you've had different things that you've done. You've been in the army, you've had your own businesses, you've got your own business now. There's sometimes, often, always, it's going to merge.
Yep.
Whether or not it's, confidence or imposter syndrome or, identity fusion, and I can talk more about what identity fusion is. But those kind of aspects, I guess, are ingrained in both your personal and business world, and it's not separate. Even people working in corporate and they're leaders or whatever. Like obviously, working in a corporate job is different because you've got a 9 to 5. Where your money's coming from. You can't, not in every organisation, but you can't influence the same way if you have your business.
Yeah.
But getting back to the trauma side of things, I think it's really good to recognise and to, lean into the fact that even if you felt like you had a great childhood, and your parents, it's not about shaming your parents. Your parents did the best that they could do.
Yep.
Right? But it's kind of understanding, okay, your parent could have been an avoidant, and they may not have given you the love that you wanted as a kid, right? And this is all behaviorism and behavioral science. So if we look at things in psychotherapy, there's a famous psychologist called Bowlby. I can't remember his first name actually, but he talks about attachment style.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Right.
Yeah.
So going on another tangent, because there's a whole load of stuff there. Right.
Yeah.
But I think what's really important for people in the work that I do is let's not compare here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, you have your story,
mm-hmm.
I have my story, and it's cultivating the acceptance in understanding that the way that we felt at that time
mm-hmm.
when we were a child and now in our adulthood,
mm-hmm.
that is our experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and being able to honour that in ourselves.
Yep.
Because it's when we don't honour it that it manifests in other areas of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be, you know, overworking.
Yep.
That could be shaming. That could be eating disorders. Like for myself, I had eating disorders, and that was always my go-to, right?
Yeah.
When I couldn't control the shit that was going on at home, you know, having, you know, different abusive parents and just not really having that safe space. I think when I was growing up, like that was my way of controlling everything.
Yeah.
If I look good on the outside, I'm going to fucking feel good on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
When I was posting those photos and I was eating a lettuce leaf, like I didn't feel good on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that all too well.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding.
Exactly,
It's
right?
exactly that.
Yeah. So for me now, I think it's there's nothing wrong with wanting to look good. There's nothing wrong with if anything, it's looking after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go back to personal development, like part of looking after yourself, as you know, someone who's very physically fit and into breath work and into mindfulness now and going that way, like all of that is really important. But I feel like it's always your intention behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like my intention when I was exercising before was I got to be skinny.
Yep.
I got to fit into a size 6 jean, right? And for someone of my height, 5'10", like it's just an athletic, like it just wasn't feasible for
Yeah.
me. You know, so now my intention is I'm going to go exercise and I'm going to do it because I feel good. And the byproduct is that, yeah, I may also look good as well, because when you look after yourself internally and externally, it's going to show on the outside. Rather than a fear-based reaction, I've got to do this. Like I used to exercise so hard that I would push my body into the point of like I could faint, you know what I mean? Like I remember, because I haven't done as many comps as you, I think I only did one. And I did an IMBA comp back in the day, and this is 10 years ago, and obviously the federations have changed.
Yeah.
Like you'd know more about it, but it was more like bikini figure and whatever. But I remember pushing myself so hard to the point where, and I had an old school coach, so he's like, you know, 1,200 calories.
Ah, lovely.
You know,
that guy, yep.
yeah, all of that shit, you know. And I remember going into the change room, doing a workout with him. He was a lovely guy, so I'm not shaming him. It's just his old school ways. You know, he'd been doing it for fucking 30 years or something. And I literally thought I was going to pass out. Like I was like, I'm going to physically pass out. Like I need to call him because I'm going to pass out right now.
Yeah. Were you doing this naturally as well?
Yeah.
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 It's a lot more dangerous these days because people are doing that now. There's more people dying because they're taking...
well, I had no... to be fair, back then it wasn't muscular.
Yeah.
So like going on a tangent, but find it harder to build muscle.
Yeah.
Like I have more slow twitch. Is it slow twitch muscle fibers? Yeah. So I'm better at, you know, endurance and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I just think for me... You know, and I guess when we're talking about trauma, so we are going on a tangent, but it's more around, you know, the intention of always doing it.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this now? So even now when I post a photo, like, because I'm like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this because I feel good in myself and because I'm proud of myself?
Yeah.
Or am I doing this so that I can get all of these likes on Instagram or on LinkedIn so that I can fill a void?
Yeah. For the validation.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I feel you. On all of that. On all of it. I think, to take it back to how I got into all this and what I'm doing now. a lot of what I was facing back then as well was hiding pain, because I was going through the divorce. So I was hiding the pain by diving myself into smoking a lot of weed, watching a lot of porn, fucking constantly working, doing all that sort of stuff to hide, because I was going through some shit. But when we moved back to Australia and it all started shifting that way, once my mate started getting in this relationship, I could see it wasn't. She came out of a lot of trauma from her previous marriage. He was then trying to go in and fix it. He was doing that. He was very self-aware of what was going on, but he also had that attachment to wanting to make something work.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah,
that was me. Yeah.
Yeah, that he also had his mother wounds, because his mum wasn't there as well. So he had that heavy attraction to the older women. To the point he was diving right into that, to like, no, it's going to work, it's going to work, it's going to work. And I'm just like, I love you. I'm watching all of this unfold. Like, I support you in what you're doing. I hear what you're saying to me. Your actions are telling me different, but I support you. But in doing that, that then kind of left me in a really shit situation with mum and dad. We then made a promise to each other. We're like, cool, let's get out of the apartment. I'll get out of mum and dad's house and move to Brisbane, and we'll get an apartment together. So I'd managed to find an apartment. He almost tried to back out of it. And I was like, no, you are not backing out of this. You made me we made a deal. We're here together. You're coming to Brisbane. Anyway, we got the apartment, and he was spending 2 or 3 days a week back with her on the sunny coast, whilst coming down to see me. And there was, at this point in time, where things started slowly shifting. Like, I'd been doing breath work since before COVID. I'd been into the spiritual side of things since I first moved to the UK. That was like one of the first time I read Asking It's Given by Esther Hicks.
Yeah, wow.
And then I got through all the books of Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet from Gold, Everything's Figure Outable, like all these self-help books. I was just in it. So I've always been there, but it was always, I was a stripper, I was a bodybuilder, I was this, that came priority over everything else.
And was that part of your identity?
The bodybuilding or the other bits? Well, the bodybuilding and the stripping were very much part of my identity.
Yeah.
Everything else was a part of it, but when people would ask a question, or if a conversation would happen that may have resulted in personal growth, I just have a bit of knowledge on it. But it wasn't that thing of like, that was my identity, that was it. I was still the stripper, the bodybuilder. Everything was about a competition. Everything was about my diet. I'm not going out. I'm not doing this. I'm focused, because I was winning. That was the thing, until I tore my lat, which is why I stopped bodybuilding. I tore my lat and I stopped winning. So that's why
So you've always been, sounds like you're very competitive.
Yeah.
We've always been very competitive.
Yeah, always very competitive, but then really always struggled to step back and acknowledge all the things that I've achieved. Yeah.
And that right there is that typical entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah. It was exactly that.
So that right there is a lot of the work that I do with people, and trying to unpack that, you know, really it is part of your identity, because you're continuing to wanting to achieve, and then nothing's good enough.
Well, I don't think it wasn't, nothing was good enough. Like when it came to bodybuilding, it was more because I've always played sport. And I played rugby growing up, and like I played some good level rugby, good level touch football, and I couldn't play it over there. And the bodybuilding was just something, I was good at, but it was always like, I wanted to be Olympia. Olympia was a thing. These were all good, but it was never reaching that sort of moment. And I think it's only been recently, since I can step back and look at everything and go, fuck.
Like, wow, look at all the things I've done.
I actually did a lot.
I mean, you sound like, in the conversation that we've had today, like you've done so much. I mean, you're in the military. You had your own business working online and as a PT, right? And then you did, obviously elite bodybuilding. You obviously had your OnlyFans.
Oh yeah.
The stripping. Porn,
fucking everything.
Now you've got obviously your your breath work and all of the things you're doing now.
Yeah, well that was it. When we moved to Brisbane, and he was barely coming down. Zach was barely coming down, and we had a few arguments, because I was then going through certain attachment problems, because I could then see there was issues going on with mum and dad, and there were issues within the family at that point in time, and I was then kind of projecting things onto my mate. It was like, oh, it was weird. I was almost like a fucking angry girlfriend. Like, you said you were going to be here at this time. Why aren't you here? And basically it was like, yeah, we'd set some times. He was late, or he'd show up the following day, or whatever it was. And it was more because I was lonely. I was lonely because it was all, we were working, we were doing the stripping, it was great, but the boys we were working with when we first got there were just, I felt everyone in Australia was backwards. And when I say all behind the times, because me and Zach, we're very open. You look at the shit we do, like we'd be in the gym fucking just doing silly shit. Everyone would just look at us and go, you're a pair of fucking clowns. And we then try to merge in with the boys that we were stripping with, and they were just like, they'd hear the stories and they're like, you guys are weird. Yeah. Like, we told me only fan stories of stuff we used to do with muscle worship and all these sorts of things. Yeah. Like, a guy used to pay me 350 quid for an hour to kiss my ass and wank into a sock.
Yes, yeah. I remember you telling me that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like, everyone found this weird, and then there was kind of that isolation because, like, Zach was barely coming down. Those boys were kind of a bit off-putting with us, and I don't know, I was feeling a bit lost. Then, and the arguments with mum and dad. Then I started seeing some girl for a little bit, and it was that thing of, we both said, yeah, we're not after anything, but then subconsciously I was kind of pushing for it, and we'd kind of see each other. She'd get really excited, then after about 2 or 3 days she'd go quiet until she wanted to see me again. And I hit her up and I was like, look, this isn't working. She then pulled right away, and from that moment I then kind of just started spiraling, because I was like, I felt lonely. I thought everything was going great. There was a couple other things, but I had this whole area where I was just like, everything just felt fucked.
It was just building up.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's right, because the show
sometimes it's not one thing either, right?
No, it wasn't.
Like, it's usually a block of... Yeah.
Well, the show wasn't paying us what they said they were. We were promised more jobs. Some of the tours they weren't putting us on when they said they were. Like, it was just this whole load of things that were going on. And that's when, funny enough, this is where everything happens for a reason, right? So that girl that I was seeing was actually best mates with the woman who owned my dog.
Right,
and
yes, amazing.
Yeah, so one day, it was one of those Instagram stories, which was like, you know, where you put down, it was like your star sign, your age, fucking pets. So I put down, I had that on there, and it had...
What's your star sign, by the way?
Cancer. My birthday's on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you very much. What are you?
Huh?
What are you?
I'm a Libra.
So I don't understand. I'm learning astrology now. I've been chatting to Luke.
You have to do your chart. Luke's very good at all that too. He loves human design.
Yeah.
What are you in human design?
1-3 generator.
Oh, so you're a 1-3. Okay, yeah. So you've got the martyr line as well. Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So, and it's so fitting. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So is mine. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the best thing about human design. It's like once you see it, you're like, oh fuck.
That's right. I can do your chart for you. I have to get your details. Yeah.
Please. But yeah, we started. Basically, she saw this and she was like, "What do you think of a blonde?" And she was blonde, and I was just like, "Hold on a second. What are you coming at here?" And she's like, "No, my dog." So she was like, I'm moving to Townsville. She's getting posted away. So she's like, I need to do something with my dog. And so I went and met him. And the day I met him, I was just like, fuck yeah, okay. I mean, we gelled straight away.
Yeah, so it was all connected.
Yeah, everything was connected. And it's hindsight that you see all these things. Like, as fucked as these situations are, there's always a lesson, or there's always something happening in those moments. Yeah. And like this girl now, I talk to her now every now and again. And everything's sweet.
The girl you dated?
Yeah, well, not dating scene, but yeah, anyway. Yeah. Because I was like, I need to, so then that happened, and then I basically retracted from social media. All you would see are photos of me and Hades on my story. I didn't post anything, and this was my... I
love the relationship you have with him, it's cute.
I fucking love him.
My dog.
Yeah, I love him. But
he's 13 though, so he's...
Oh, he's a bit older. Yeah. He's only 4. But he... the stories, like the things I used to post on my old page, I were getting 4 million views. Like 3-second videos of me with my head in some girl's crutch on stage. Like, there were the most provocative videos, but I was constantly getting flagged. It was all these things were happening because it went against Instagram rules. So I basically stopped. Pulled away from everything, and it was one morning I was doing a breathwork session, and it just came to me. It's like, you need to become a facilitator. And I was like, okay.
Who are you doing a session with?
This is me. This is me.
Yourself, yeah.
It was a part of my morning routine. I'd walk Hades, come home, stretch, do my breath work, and I was like, you need to be a facilitator. And I'm like, okay, I need to.
And this is when you're still doing your OnlyFans and stuff?
Yeah, still OnlyFans, still stripping.
Yeah.
And I'd reached out to Andy, because me and him had known each other for a while through my ex-wife. And I also reached out to another couple of friends who run retreats as well. And when I reached out to Andy, he was like, man, come out. I had a show actually happening in Perth. I had 3 shows happening in Perth. So he was like, come out here and check it out, because I think you'd be really good for what we're doing out here. So I was like, okay, I'll come out. And I'd actually never met him before.
Because were you in Brisbane then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd never met Andy before. It was, we'd met through Clubhouse years ago when I was living in Thailand. And I came over here, got to meet everyone. It was fucking amazing. The energy was really good with the people and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, cool, I could really do this. I then got to meet Sean and everyone else, and I was like, okay, this is cool. Sean ended up convincing me to move over as soon as possible. So I did the shows here, went home, and I actually went to Vegas for a week straight after, because I had another guy who has a...
You're fine.
Yeah, I went to Vegas for a week because I had a guy who was a fan of mine who...
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or? No,
it's funny as fuck. It's funny as fuck. Anyway, he had a tickle fetish. He had a tickle fetish, and I hate being tickled.
Do you?
Fucking, I hate it. When I was young, like 10, 12, or whatever it was, we were away on a rugby camp, and I got piled on by a rugby team of 15 boys, and they tickled me. So I hate being tied up.
Yeah.
I hate fucking being restricted, and I hate being tickled.
Ladies, remember this.
Yes, I will. No tickling, and no tying up.
Now.
Yeah, no tying up.
So I'm a 6'2", so 6 is the leader.
Yep.
And then the 2 is the hermit. So as I've gotten older, I've realised how much I need to like go within.
Yeah.
And because I pick up, like, I guess I pick up intuitively easy, and I can have to go, and process things in my own bubble. But the 1-3 is like the mother line, and then the six is the leader, but it's the development. So Luke also has 6 in his as well.
Yeah.
I think he's a 4-6. So we're not supposed to reach our peak until we're 50.
Wow.
And all of the life lessons and shit that we've been through.
Yeah.
And then it also has a 3 line in it too. So the 6, because it goes through the development stages, like the first 30 years of your life, you're pretty much learning, and it's very trial and error.
Yeah.
And it's very similar. And then the 6 then, gravitates into more of that leader, grounding, balancing energy.
Yeah. I was listening to this on the actual the Human Design podcast the other day.
Oh yeah.
Because
you got that?
I've got the app as well.
Yeah, there's a few.
I actually started doing my it's one with Jenna Zoe. There's the one.
Yeah, that one's the one.
Cool.
English girl.
Yeah, English girl. Yeah. But I started following that, and I was actually going to start studying it, and I got to the first thing. I got to the first lesson of it, and at the same point in the podcast, they was talking about Kabbalah, and as soon as it started talking about Kabbalah, I was like, "Oh, I want to know more about that."
So should I do it this way? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, how's that?
I reckon it'd be better if you had cameras on.
Oh yeah, because we got only one camera at the moment.
Hero says when I don't have this set up, I'm telling you what to do. It's like, you haven't got the fucking set up.
I'm fully with you. I want to have more cameras for it.
Because then you can have like your side, or it can zoom in on. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we're doing. So we're actually going through with a whole podcast setup. Matt's sorting it out for us. So Sean's funding it, and Matt's setting it up.
Is Matt the dude that
He did the sound, Jenny.
Yeah.
I did, sorry.
It is recording?
Yes. So we've got the whole setup happening, which is going to be good. So this is basically going to be the podcast, audio, everything room, which is great. What was I saying?
Yeah, cool. We were talking about the catalyst for for your change.
Yeah, that's right. I came over here, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, that's sorry, Vegas. Yeah. So basically, I was over at Vegas, did that. That was my last proper job of like working within that sort of industry, because it was, again, he paid flights, paid for my time there, put me in a hotel, did it all. So I got to see Vegas, which was great.
Yeah.
But then I basically got home and I had a week left. I was originally going to move here in October, then it was going to be July, and then I was like, fuck it. So I literally packed up and moved over and basically arrived here, and my Hades came over like 2 days later. And it was good. Like there were a lot of things that were promised to happen that didn't happen. I'd put my faith in a lot of things. I put my faith in a lot of things. And I think the big thing for me is why I felt so okay with it all is whenever I put my faith into something that's new, that's scary, that is completely unknown, is if I dive into it and just surrender, it always works out. So with Forbidden, so the original company I was stripping with in the UK, I reached out to them and they were like, yeah, come down, check the show, do that. I then jumped into the show. I jumped in, met the boys, and at the end of the show, they were like, ladies, it's Ash's birthday. Who thinks he should get on stage? So they got me on stage, and basically I went old school stripper on some chick. And then
old school stripper? What's that?
So like
I don't know what the old school stripping is.
Basically, you're on a chair, bump and grind and wag, shit. Where Forbidden was a lot more sexy circus. Okay. So it's a full performance, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, 2 days later, the boss called me and was like, I'm sorry, but we just can't afford to have you. We just can't afford it. And I was like, look, I'll work for free. I just want to be a part of what you have, because I really like what you guys are doing. And he hung up the phone, and then 2 days later, about half an hour later, gave me a call and said, I'll give you 50 quid a show. And at that point, we only had Saturday shows. But from that, I went from working as a stagehand. 3 months later, I was on stage as one of the performers. About 3 years later, I was the face of the show.
Yeah, wow.
So it was like, and that was someone took a complete gamble on me, and I didn't know if it was going to work. I just took a leap. Yeah. So when it comes to this, it was the same thing. I had a really beautiful feeling about it. Everything was telling me to come this way, and you've got the right people around you. It feels right. And this is where I started really trusting my gut, because this is where I started probably learning about human design and me being a sacral with my authority. Yeah. I started okay, really started to trust my gut.
As well,
So that's where I basically came over here and just surrendered to everything that was happening. I was watching it, I was noticing, and things weren't happening. They were happening, but they weren't happening. What was promised wasn't happening. And I was still off social media, because when I came over here, I was told, we've got a social media team, we have this, we have this, we have this, you don't have to worry about it, all that sort of shit. So I'm like, cool, sweet. And then it was through another breathwork session, just before I went to Thailand, it was like, okay, you're ready for social media again. Yeah. So we went to Thailand, and that was when the Consciously Ash page popped up. The Consciously Ash page was rebranded from Got Swolled. So Got Swolled was the podcast me and my mate had with where we filmed the porn and talked all the nonsense. Yeah, yeah. And we basically I rebranded that Got Swolled page, and that became Consciously Ash.
So for you, I guess, what's the biggest, from all of your experiences that you've learned, and I know it's hard when you've had so many different experiences, so I probably need to be more specific about what that experience is, but maybe from, stripping and it being about the external, because obviously bodybuilding, it's all about how you look, like you're, and I'm definitely not an expert at this, but you're, judged on symmetry and all of those different aspects. Yeah. Obviously, it's different in different federations and whatever. And then, obviously when you're stripping, it's about being hot and looking good and having, sexy muscles and, it's all the external, right? Yeah. Like it is the external, right? Yeah. And then obviously OnlyFans, it's the same thing, right? So it's just, again, it's about more so how you look. And I know there's parts to it, so I'm not saying that it's all of that, but, it is a lot about the external. Yeah. So for you now, what do you think you've, really learnt about yourself? And obviously all of these experiences make up who you are.
Yeah.
But what are the two things you've learned about yourself through that period?
Yeah.
And now moving away from that?
Yeah.
What are the two things that you've most learned?
Self-confidence. My confidence is really good.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where...
You've learnt self-confidence because you've been doing that?
Yeah. Because if I'm put on stage, there's nothing more terrifying than putting yourself through 12, 14, 16, 20 weeks of brutal prep.
Yeah.
Removing yourself from everyone. Not going to parties, eating the same thing every single day. To then stepping on a stage in front of 200-300 people to be judged by people you have no idea who they are, who have no doubt got favourites, to be told, yes, you're good enough, yes, you're not.
Okay.
That moment there is, you've got to be able to step on that stage and to be able to walk away with your head up and take the right critiques, to be able to walk away and still feel good within yourself. So, you know what, I fucking did that. That was incredible. Instead of going, fuck, why didn't they pick me? Like, having that self-confidence to do that. But that also stepped into forbidden. I was a rugby player. Literally, I was a rugby player. I tripped over my own 2 feet. They had to teach me how to dance. Like, they spent 3 weeks spent 3 weeks teaching me the chorus of a routine that we performed on Britain's Got Talent. And it was like...
So you went on Britain's Got Talent?
Yeah, in 2015. It's like 87 million views on YouTube. It's wild. I'll show you. But we went from teaching me how to dance to the first show I ever did. I remember stepping on stage and I invited one of my mates. She was a professional dancer and came off at the break and she was like, you need to relax. And she was just so rigid. But then we were doing shows again where we were in front of 10 to 100 to, I think the most we did was 2,500 people was Britain's Got Talent, but like 1,200. And to be able to step on stage and fuck up a routine, sit there and laugh about it, and then crack and get back into it, that's another one.
Because part of resilience is failure too, right?
Yeah. And it's that, and I think that brought a more of a human element to it, and that's where I became a performer. And the thing with being a performer is, with stripping, with OnlyFans, with bodybuilding, is you need to be able to step on that stage, and you could have the best looks, you can do all that, but if you don't know how to present yourself, and if you don't know how to engage with the crowd, and
it's about charisma, isn't it?
Exactly. So
you've either it's the X factor.
Yeah, it is.
Essentially.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that was the biggest thing that I took from all of those, is it gave me that charisma to be able to have the confidence to step in front of a camera, to be able to literally run around naked and not give a shit.
What were the downsides of it that transpired whilst you were working in that space? Like, for you, did you pick up on anything where, like, was there any validation needs? Was there anything that you kind of picked up on through doing all that kind of work, where it was, about how you looked?
No, I felt,
right? Obviously, it's taught you resilience, confidence, all of that, which is brilliant, because now you're bringing that into this next stage of your life.
Yeah. I think for me it was, could have been self-worth. Because growing up, I always had a thing of, like, I didn't know how to talk to women. That was a big thing. It was always, you fucking read The Game. Have you heard the book, The Game?
Yeah.
So I read that, and it was just like, I was around these people that just found it so easy all the time to talk. And the validation came from being able to step on that stage and, like, performing and have every woman just throw themselves at you. And
so it is validation?
It was.
Okay.
It was. That was the first thing that I really noticed. Then it got to the point where I was, I actually don't give a shit who's in the crowd. I just really enjoy being on stage, and I really enjoy performing. That was just something, like, I've always said, no matter what, when I'm in stripping, I'm in bodybuilding, I was doing OnlyFans, even now, I've always been in the business of changing lives. Because with stripping and the amount of people that would come up and be like, you guys are amazing, you're so humble, it's really amazing to watch, I love seeing you guys just mess around on stage. But also, they'd message us, like, a couple of days after, they'd either message a page or message privately, and it was like, thank you so much, I went home and ravished my husband, we have not had sex like that in years. And it was like, we were saving marriages. We were literally having marriages being saved because they were coming here, they didn't know how to be intimate with someone. Like, we bring some girls on stage, you'd have them, I don't know, blindfold on, teasing all their senses on stage, making them lose their nut. And then they'd come off going, whoo, whoo, and you'd be like, thank you, darling, thank you so much. Like off stage, obviously for us, this is a performance. Yeah, like this is a performance for us. Like we do this every fucking night. Like we know what we're doing, but for them, it's like it's that moment of, oh my God, someone just paid complete attention to me and just watched, like just made me feel like I've never felt in a long time. And I went home. So they used to go back and to the husbands.
So was it then validating for you though to be able to do that?
As I said, at the start it was. I think when it got into me being able to see I'm in the business of changing lives, it was beautiful to see that we had, I guess, it validated because it was beautiful to see that we had that power to be able to help other people in that sense.
Okay.
So I think that was a really beautiful thing of it. Same thing with OnlyFans. Look, in a way, you were still able to save people in that way. Bodybuilding, you had people literally changing their entire lives and their routines because they wanted to be healthy.
Well, it's interesting because you're reframing it in a way because other people can look at it differently, but it's depending on that person's experience, right?
Exactly.
How do you feel? I mean, obviously you're going into this, you're into this new space now. You've stepped away from, that life. Is that right?
The adult industry, yeah.
Yeah, so you stepped away.
Yeah.
What came up for you when you stepped away? Like, and if you being honest with yourself about it, like what came up when you stepped away from it? Because I think I'm just interested to understand because of those, different areas that you worked in.
Yeah.
And obviously you thrive on the unknown anyway. I think that seems like something that's in your kind of mindset.
Well, that's my...
that's your personality.
That's the 3, isn't it? Fucking find out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's experimentation.
Yeah.
The 3, yeah.
Yeah.
But going into a different journey, which is more aligned on, mindfulness, breath work, dredging up like deep trauma as to why like we are the way we are and trying to purge and really understand, the stories that don't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
What came up for you starting that? Because it's very new.
As in, what came up as in the things that I started facing as I started doing it?
Yeah, like what came up for you when you were letting go of it? Was there any, I guess any resistance to moving away from that lifestyle? And if so, what was it, I guess? Has anyone asked you that question before?
No. I have thought about it though, because I think the big thing for me is reframing it. So when I say reframe it, is the thing I enjoyed most is being on stage. Love being on stage. It's where I feel most comfortable. Pardon me.
Yep.
So being on stage, like my goal now is to still be on stage, but I want to be a speaker. My goal is to be flown around to events to speak, to facilitate, to be able to still be that person that can change lives with the power of words instead of changing lives by me getting my kid off and gyrating in someone's face. Like that's where the difference is.
Definitely. So I'm not asking you the transferable skills.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking you because we know you have like superpowers to be able to do that.
Thank you.
So you're almost trying, So you're almost trying to explain to me how you can transfer your skills that you've had to be able to do what you do now.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, but I'm trying to understand like what came up for you and trying to. I mean, I can speak about my experience if you want.
Yeah, give me an example. So it's not comfortability; it's better understanding.
Yeah, I guess so. For me, having worked, so in Melbourne, I had more of a HR kind of background, and I'd always been very people centric. And I guess if I tie that in, to my personality, it always kind of made sense because I'd always been a helper, right? And I use other modalities like personality profiling and stuff. Like I love lots of different things as self-development. Yeah. So I'm a 2 on like the Enneagram. which is another type coaching thing you can use, right? So there's so many different things. I don't believe in one modality. I like astrology, I like human design, I like, different coaching frameworks. I think psychotherapy is really powerful. Like there's so many different things, and I think there is no one size fits all, right? But I think for me, only speaking for me personally, I'm similar to you in a sense where, and I feel like a lot of people are like this, even if I work in roles where I was helping them with career counselling or career, to help them, in that phase. And then I started working with startup businesses like 5 years ago and really understanding the entrepreneur mindset and what drives people and all of that, right? And then really understanding, okay, let's go deeper here. Once I'd gone deeper with myself to really understand, okay, how can I help these people with mental resilience and well-being and understanding, the pain points of identity fusion and burnout, right? But I think what came up for me in, my own journey of changing my career, and this may not be for you, this is personally for me, and I'm quite honest about it, I guess, is the fact that I think I'd been in one identity, and it's the same thing, right? There's transferable skills, right? But I'd been in one identity for so long in my life, and then it was like putting it out there to the universe and I'd already been doing that, but I just hadn't put it out there on social media or on LinkedIn or whatever. And I think it was that fear of being seen. Like for me personally, that fear of being seen in my most authentic self and being seen in that I'm changing my identity, and probably, to at one point was caring, what people are going to think of that. And then, I sort of really started doing inner work, and I'm still continuing that because I'm very real about that because of my background. It makes sense, if you call it others referring or whatever. It's not about validation, but it's more people understanding, hey, like this is the path that I'm on. It's always been in me. I've always been doing it, right? I'm just going deeper with it. So the question for you is more not asking about, okay, do you have the skills to transfer into doing what you're doing? Because you're upskilling yourself, you're immersing yourself in communities to be able to learn more and be able to facilitate and all of that. But it's more like psychologically, was there anything underneath there that came up for you when you were making that change? Like, was there like a feeling of like a trigger or anything there that was sitting there? It's like, fuck, like, I'm excited for this, but there's something else there for me.
No, I think mine was pure excitement for it.
You, really?
Yeah, mine was pure excitement because I've rebranded myself
so many
a few
times.
And I think like the first rebrand, like going from the military to then beginning to work in stripping, that was in the UK. That was the first one. But like as soon as I had the decision to come over and start doing everything that I was doing, sitting with what I wanted to do, sitting with how I was feeling about it all, was pure excitement. It was. So
for you, you're used to that. That's something that you've
look, when I was coaching, there was the fear of being seen, because I used to watch a lot of other coaches. There were some big names in the industry. You see them call out people that are just feeding bullshit advice. And I used to see that and go, fuck, I never want to be that guy. I never want to be caught on those. And I've seen people that I know being called out, and I was just like, fuck, I never want to be that guy. And that was in coaching.
It's because they're driving from ego,
and that was in the coaching side of things, where now, like, I didn't expect to get a following the way it's grown. Not at all. I was just finally doing shit that felt authentic to what I was doing. And things that I've been doing. To reach out to the beginner, to reach out to the person who's about to do a transition, doesn't know what to do, where to start, how to meditate, how to breathe, how to do any of these. That's what I started doing. That's why I started doing it.
Okay. So that makes sense, because you've been very entrepreneurial, and I guess for you, you've had to rebrand yourself so many times in your life. And that makes complete sense. I'm interested to know if you feel comfortable though, like through obviously doing your breath work, you know, you've done work with Luke. What was that thing you guys did?
Harpe.
Yeah, so all of that stuff, and when you guys went away on your trip, like through doing all this and through kind of doing deeper work in yourself, what are some realizations that you've had about yourself? Like what's come up for you?
That I've got this trauma that I never knew that I had, or there are things deep down that have never been resolved that I never knew even existed inside me. Can you
feel comfortable saying?
Oh yeah. So there was the abandonment things through my mum.
Yeah.
So we did one thing which came up with. We spoke to the unconscious mind and went back, and one thing that came up was, the first thing that actually came up was in the womb. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. So I pushed it away and went on to something else, and it came up with my mum at 7 years old, and where she felt abandoned and unheard and all these sorts of things. Then from that, I actually spoke to my parents a few days later about this, and mum was like, actually, there's about a 99% chance that you had a twin that miscarried during the pregnancy.
Wow.
So I was like, well, there's your abandonment problems right fucking there. But so we went through that. That was a big one for me to realize it was there. An attachment style that I had and I'm a lot better with was an anxious attachment. I didn't realize this until recently, but it was how I was made when I was in relationships with narcissists.
Okay, yeah.
That had me it would be love bombing, it'd be this, it'd be I'm leaving.
And is that something that's a realization that you've learnt in the last because you've been in Perth for about 6 months, is it?
March. So 4 or 5 months.
April, May, June. Only 4 months. Well, it feels like you've been here longer than that.
Yeah, March or February is one of the two.
Yeah, wow.
But it's been...
Feels like you've always been in Perth, yeah.
I know, it does. It fucking does. It feels so natural to be here.
When I moved here, I had the same feeling.
Yeah.
And actually, in astrology, one of my healing lines, so again, we're going on a tangent, but this is what we're going to do today. So in astrology, you have the Chiron line is your healing line. Okay. And that gets activated in certain locations. Yeah. And then I looked into it, and one of my Chiron lines is Perth.
So I was actually looking at this with someone the other day, but we couldn't work out how to use the app to be able to look at it all. So I'm going to got a question on this one.
Yeah, so we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, please.
But so there's a lot, really, the last 4 months. Isn't it interesting? I guess and I guess it's almost similar, but then opposite to me in a way, because where you've kind of, you've rebranded yourself, you've had, so many different businesses and you've been really confident. And I've always exuded, confidence, but then I've started my own, and obviously there's always different masks and different layers to people, right?
Yeah.
But I think my journey, so your journey on that is, this isn't hard. Like me doing my first podcast a couple of months ago, I was fucking shitting myself. I'm like, I'm going to fuck up. I mean, these are my notes, right? So I have it there, and I think maybe that's like a defense mechanism, but I like to sort of, lean on that because that's that's the perfectionistic, traits in me, right? Just depending on how it goes, but it's just whether it's a coping mechanism or whatever. But it's interesting because that's something where you've kind of naturally fallen into, and for you it's just like in you. And then for me, the really deep psychological stuff and the really, understanding about narcissistic abuse and understanding attachment style and, that real depth of understanding why people are the way they are and understanding, most importantly, yourself. Because you can't figure out everyone else, you need to figure out yourself first. Yep. That's always been really ingrained in me, but it's now, and I'm in that line, if we talk about the 6-2 or whatever, where I'm getting more comfortable. I've always been in that leader space, but had that sort of hermit line as well, where I'm being more comfortable getting that message out now. Yep. Yep. So it's a bit like the yin and the yang. I like it.
It's good. It is. And I think that's been the biggest thing, especially for myself coming here, is this is where a lot of the work has started. Look, it all really started with my ex-wife.
Yeah, it was the catalyst.
It really was, because she taught me a lot about mental health She taught me, when I say taught me a lot about mental health, her sister was in a hospital has been in for a long time. She's also she had a childhood that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. She's had it rough. And I was in the people pleasing stage then. But I was also in a stage where I was allowing myself to be walked over because I was afraid of being abandoned because I didn't have anyone over there with me. And if I didn't have my wife, I didn't have there was just a whole massive abandonment, basically. And I noticed I started repeating that cycle when I came here. And this is where that mentor
Well, thanks for sharing that, because it's not easy to, it's not easy to be vulnerable and to share those, to share those things.
Thank you. No, it's one thing I've said, I'll always be very open. This is why that video you saw of me and Luke is me basically blubbering, fucking spitting, vomiting and all those sorts of things. Is I'm like, I want people to see the reality. I want people to know it's okay to be vulnerable. I want people to know it's okay to talk about the shit that's going on with your life. And that's why I will do it, because we're all going through it. No one else gives a shit. And it's all up to us to work on ourselves. And if you can show, again, because I've had the stripping, I've had because I've had all of that. People, and I've had the following. I've had people look at me and go, "Oh my God, you're a god, you're an idol." And it's like, great, cool, but I'm not. I'm me. I'm a human. I go through the shit. I go through the same shit you're probably going through. But no one talks about it. And because no one talks about it, it's always brushed under the rug. And this is why we look at men. They don't talk about it. They still walk it off. They'd rather fucking hide away, not have their relationship break down because they're not open to talk about the shit that's going on.
Yeah, and they're not sometimes open. I mean, it's different for each person, but it's societal conditioning. I mean, you only have to look at the way that men are raised, and also women. We're not in the 50s anymore, right? But it's the societal conditioning of, the way that men have not been able to express their feelings. And I think, there's obviously a lot more change now. Like, we're living in an era where, obviously, like yourself and different communities, people are coming together to be able to express that. But, I think it's a big journey. And I think, even talking, obviously, self-development, which today's about, it's being a student for life. So for me, it's like, I've reached a certain point of consciousness, and I feel like anyone who thinks that they're there and that it never ends, it doesn't. No. Because even when things happen in your life, and, for me, I've had, losing my brother, right? That will never leave me, you know. I actually saw a coach yesterday, and she does actually shamanic healing. And she said to me, Kate, she's like, you are so articulate. You've done so much work on yourself. You're obviously working in this space. She's like, you actually don't need to do any counselling. She's like, we need to do some shamanic healing, And she sort of brought up things in me, and I was like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, fuck, and I need to, to continue to purge some of that stuff because of my inner child and the things that have come up for me, and abandonment wounds were huge for me. I mean, my mum, she has a lot of challenges, and I'm not going to speak on this fully about that, but there's that. And then meeting my dad when I was 16 and him, not being there for me as a kid, when you're little, they're the template. Yeah. Right? So your mum is the first woman that you see, and that's the relationship that templates your future partners. Yep. And for me, men or whatever, and then also obviously the wounds of, femininity and women being always in their hyper masculine or hyper independence or avoidance and all of that stuff. But I think what I'm trying to say is that, this kind of work is, whatever modality or whatever works for you. And for me, I love lots of different things. I'm a student for life, but I think there's no one size fits all. Yep. And what I think is really important when I see these people online and these different coaches is, I want to see the authenticity in people. Because there are we're not naming and shaming here, but there are people who are doing it for their egos, you know, and it becomes quite dangerous because trauma has different levels. And we have to be realistic about, okay, it's like when I'm working with a client, like I'm not a psychologist. I'm not there to diagnose someone, right? I don't want to do that, right? And I have my own opinions about psychology anyway. Like I think some psychologists can be really helpful, I have found. But then for me, I feel like I need that spiritual alignment. Like I have to have that because I find it too clinical. And I feel like for me personally, again, not shaming psychologists, but the mind and body connection sometimes isn't there. And the way that they were taught, obviously being very scientific and doing a degree for 6 years, I praise you for that. But at the same time, I think we're now in a phase where there is a place for that. Like people who are going through hard times, like you know, there's phases of it. Like for me, the trauma that I went through, I needed to see psychologists at a point in my life. Like 10 years ago, I needed that, right? But now it's kind of like I've done all the talk therapy. So I have, I've done studies for counselling, and I find that that is helpful because when I'm working with clients, it helps me. Coaching is very forward thinking, but when you're supporting someone, you need to be able to tap into both skills. Right, so entrepreneurs want answers, they want solutions, they want, I need this, I need that, like, let's get to this. And there's some people who want that. But then there's a more therapeutic mindfulness aspect where to bring people back into their body, we can't be doing that.
I couldn't agree more.
So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. No, it is. It's you see it too often where it's the healers that don't do the work themselves. They heal, they call themselves healers to start working with people to hide away from their own shit, but in actual fact they don't. They haven't dealt with their own shit, and unfortunately that's where it's toxic, that's where it's bad, because they project.
Exactly.
And that does more damage than good. So it's like that's why I want to be a leader in the space, to show that I'm doing the work. I'm not sitting there telling you, it's like, oh, come here, join it, come coach with me, let me help you, I can do this. No, I'm actually fucking put myself through the shit so you can see exactly what I'm doing and what I'm going through. It's not pretty. None of this is pretty, because we're dredging up shit that was either completely unknown to us or pushed away for a very long time to become better versions of ourselves, to make sure everyone around us gets to experience the best versions of us. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. And it's the more and more I see how it is, again, like men and women, but obviously men are still, I was speaking to a friend this morning, and it was very interesting hearing what she'd been going through with this fella. And all it took was a conversation of someone who was willing to go forward to him and open up and say, no, I'm here, like, let's talk, to have the conversation fully switch around. Now, look, it's words over actions at the moment. Well, obviously we want to see actions, but it's
opening that up for
but it's showing men that it's like you can have someone that you can look up to, that can be in a position that has been on stage, on TV, all these sorts of things, can turn around and is like, dude, cry, it's okay. Like, you can come talk to me. You know that thing that you've been hiding away and you don't want to tell anyone, that's your deepest, darkest secret, and you refuse to ever say to anyone, which is causing you illness, making you feel like shit, causing this, and then projecting into other areas of your life. It's okay. You can sit there and talk about it to someone, and that talking will no doubt start to open a whole world for you of what can change. And this is why I'm very selective of the people that I give my energy to. Very selective.
So am I, I've definitely learnt that.
Yeah, and that's the other big lesson, is not people pleasing, being selective, but also making myself available to those people to go, are you free for a call? And these are friends. Obviously, when I start working with clients, when I come back from Thailand in October, I'm going to start taking on clients.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So I'd love to hear about that. So you're going to live as a monk.
Live as a monk, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
have you read Jay Shetty's book? Yeah.
No, I haven't. I've watched a lot of Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
I have watched a lot of him, and I love where he comes from. But I'm like, I thought, fuck it. I'm a very big believer of, if something starts showing itself in my life regularly, it's a calling. So wasted like the ayahuasca with psychedelics and like plant medicine journeys, if they started arising in my life, then it was like, okay, cool, this is a calling for it. I thought about the monk stuff for a while, and I was like, look, if I'm going to step into this space, I want to make sure as I'm doing this proper justice. Like, I don't want to come in here and go, I watched a YouTube video or I took a class with some guy who told me how to meditate and that was it. No, I want to make sure as I know what I'm doing.
So tell us how, like, the logistics of that. I think I'd asked you or whatever around that. Like, so you're going for a month.
Yeah.
You're going to Thailand. Whereabouts in Thailand are you going?
We go to
no phones.
No phones, no nothing. I shaved my head. I shaved my beard. I shaved my eyebrows.
Yeah.
I literally lived like a monk for a month. We get food from the village.
So you're doing it on your own?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's a thing called iMonastery. So what they do is they get people that apply from all around the world. And you could be 10 of you, 15 of you, anything like that. And your day is very structured. You're up at like 4:30. You're doing, I think it's like an hour and a half of morning chanting, an hour and a half of meditation, walk through the village. They get you the whole structure. So it's very interesting. But like, you can actually get ordained as a monk in 8 hours. Like, you can go into a monastery and get ordained as a monk.
Yeah.
But I'm like, nah.
So how can you get ordained as a monk in 8 hours? I don't get it.
You go through I don't know what it is. I didn't really look at it.
8 hours doesn't seem like a...
No. I looked at it. I'm just like, the fact that's even a thing, no. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to look at that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I want to do it properly. Because I want to make sure if I come into this, it's...
So no one's going to be filming you or anything?
So they do have people that will be filming and taking photos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So but you'll get that at the end.
Share some of your journey.
Yeah, you'll get that at the end.
So it's really authentic. It's not staged.
Yeah, every bit of it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I want to be that person that can lead from the front and go, I actually know what I'm talking about. And I think that probably does stem back into the coaching side of things, of not wanting to be called out. Because,
well, I guess, you know, it will add another dimension to what you've already done. I mean, in terms of being called out, like, I don't know, because it's an interesting one, but I think it's amazing to go and do that and see what comes up for you in that time, because we are so, where is my phone? We are so attached, you know, to our phones, and, you know, we're so attached to, like, the dopamine hits, right? Like, even if we're in a grounded state and whatever, and the phone is a huge addiction now in our society.
Yeah.
You know, so switching off from that as well. So, but you're, like, for you, what do you, I mean, you obviously don't have to have expectations, but what are you wanting to achieve so that if people can say, look, you've done this, or? It's
more a deeper understanding of myself.
Okay.
Like, with coaching, okay, there are like PT coaching, there are multiple different things of dieting, training, all this sort of stuff. When it comes to self-help, personal growth, personal development, things like this, there are, again, multiple different modalities. But I think, like we just said, with the people who are becoming coaches or healers in the space that haven't done the work on themselves, is by me going through and doing this, it is a way for me to dive further into myself to then go, okay, cool. I understand this, this, and this. I understand proper meditation. I understand how these certain mantras will help, or these certain chants will help. Like, it's diving deeper into the spiritual side to be able to bring this back into Western culture, essentially.
Yeah, all of these things, all of those modalities have happened for thousands of years, isn't it?
And they've worked for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's that, and they still work. But because we've been conditioned, we don't see that. We're very pharmacology, where you will take the pills, go to the doctor, do this sort of thing.
Band-aiding, yeah.
Exactly. Where if you can, like Joe Dispenza, he's big for it, using the power of the mind to heal the body. If you can, this is a conversation I had with Luke the other morning when we went for a walk, like wanting to understand further about meditation, further about astrology, but even how I can put myself into a position of being the higher version of myself, to be able to see different perspectives of people, to be able to show more compassion, but through the compassion and the authenticity that I gain from it, to then help it rub off onto other people. So then they go, oh shit, actually, yeah, I really see the way he thinks, and that actually makes a lot of sense. Oh shit, okay, I can do this. Like, help people change their perspective on the ways they view their own healing, the way they view this, the way they view that.
So reframing, yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, reframing has been an entire thing throughout my life of reframing what stripping is. Literally reframing it and getting a different view to people.
The master of reframing.
The master of reframing. I'm gonna have that. It'll be in
the chameleon.
It'll be in my book, Strip It a Monk. I'm actually going to write a book called Strip It a Monk. So
I want to write a book as well.
Yeah.
I think for me, what's interesting, what I think courses and like the training I've done. So I've done an NLP practitioner.
Where'd you do that?
I did it online, and I'm going to Sydney in a couple of weeks to do further training. And look, NLP is one modality, right? And I think it does get a bit of slack because of Tony Robbins, but it's all about who is implementing it, right? So all of these different areas, so whether it's, counselling, or whether it's doing somatic therapy, or whether it's doing, NLP, I mean, there's different types of coaching, and then I'm going to go on and do some further majors in mindfulness and probably some somatic work as well, so that I have a really well-rounded, experience. One thing that came up for me is, when I was doing all of this training, is what I think is really important is, and I think it's a balance. So you have people who do all the theory and whatever that we've spoken about, and they don't have life experience, right? But to be fair, they've probably still learned something in them. So we've got to make sure we don't project as well. They probably learn a lot about themselves through their development, through their coaching. But what I think is really powerful is when you bring that life experience and then you actually do some of the work in terms of studies and certifications, because it actually helps you articulate things in your own way. Because you can do any certain course, but it's like you're putting your own brand on it. It's like your Instagram or whatever, right? So you're putting your own spin on it. But what I do think is important for people is to do some type of training in what they feel is going to be best for them, so that they are supporting their clients in a way that's holistic and they're not projecting, right? Because what doesn't help people is if we tell people what to do. If we tell people what to do and we're not there, a lot of the time, people are going to get lost depending on their level of awareness. So if you're giving people the tools and the practices, or you're helping people to understand, okay, can you see this? Like, can you see that some of these things, how they tie in? So like, for example, when I'm working with a client and I get a bit more of a foundation of their personality structure, and we work on meta programs, and we work on what they call the meta model. I won't go into technical kind of terms, but it's all just programming, right? Some of it's unconscious beliefs, and how when we view the world, it's in our perception. So how you view things is in Ash's perception. How I view things is in Kate's perception. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily right. It's our perception, right? So it's to understand, what beliefs are you holding on to about yourself that you don't need anymore, right? So it's giving, I guess, a bit more structure to be able to then say, hey, like, how can we move forward with this? So that they can process it. So for me, I've then, done these studies, and then I've kind of used my own intuition with a client, understanding, okay, that's probably not going to work for them. Because some of the clients I work with, they want to be more pure forward thinking, as I said, pure coaching, and they want to do a bit of inner child work, but they get resistance to it. And if they're not ready and you push someone, right, or if you open up something in someone and they're not ready, that can be catastrophic. So that's the only thing, I think, for me, where I say to people, yes, of course, you can do all the theory and you can do all the degrees or all the certifications and all of that, and then implement your life experience. But if you can do both, then I feel like that's even more powerful.
I couldn't agree more. I used to see it in the army. You'd have you have the officers that would come through at fucking 19, 20 years old and would try to tell you exactly how to do this, this, and this. And it's like, sorry, sir, you've been in the army since breakfast. You have no idea how this works. Because it's a whole different thing. You need the life experience to be able to how we do it, just like you need to have the theory and the actual spiritual side of things.
Exactly.
And that's, yeah.
But then on the other side of it as well, like, you know, you it's interesting because I'll share like what I do and like the certificate or things that I've done, but I'm also mindful I don't want to be put in a box. Right? And I have spoken about that before, because I've done this. It doesn't mean that I'm going to do that with you.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go, or Tony Robbins on you. It's just more, you know, this is given a framework. And again, it's about your coaching is very personal.
Yeah.
You have to vibe with that person. You have to. So if, for example, for me, if I'm going to see a coach or a spiritual healer, like I have to meet them to see if our energies align, to see if there is that alignment there. Because if there isn't, it's not going to work. So I think that's a big thing. And I think people will, you know, you're going, obviously, you know, you're doing your month in Thailand, but people will be drawn to you as a person. And then you obviously putting that, you know, on top of everything and whatever else you decide to go and study or you've done, they'll be drawn to Ash.
Yeah. That's as branding, isn't it?
Yeah.
As people by people. And this is where understanding someone's energy and being able to see the authenticity, like you said earlier, see their authenticity, to know they're actually the real deal, is what I think's becoming more important these days with everything we're doing. Because there are a lot of charlatans out there, and they make a lot of money, but they also get a very bad rep.
Yeah, and it's up to them if they want to live with that. And I don't know, if we talk about spirituality and things going full circle, you never know, right? Like there's only one thing, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, but there's only one person that they do something with and they open up something which is too much for that person because they don't have the experience or they're doing it too early or they're just doing it based on money. And that can be very catastrophic for someone's mental health. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So for me, if I get an inkling where, you know, I think that this is not going to work because this person hasn't, you know, it's a bit different for me because I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs. Yep. So I'm kind of, when I begin working with them, you know, we're focusing on the business and then we're seeing where these things are coming out and then we're kind of bringing it all together. Yeah. But if I saw something where I was like, you know, I don't have the capacity here to help you, like I would refer. Yeah.
I was going to say, do you refer?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And that shows you the difference between a professional and other people. Other people will sit there and just take the money. And they go, I'll Google it and I'll work it out. And I'll work out how I can help you. I saw it so much as coaching. That's why I didn't like it. So, I love the fact we didn't even use this. Was there anything you wanted to cover on there?
Oh my goodness, so funny.
Was there anything you wanted to cover on there?
So there is an interesting thing around self-talk and inner dialogue. Ooh. So if you go to the last page, that's a really interesting thing.
I still love that we've got the whole page that we didn't even do. That's amazing.
This is so me, like typing all this shit out. This is good though, because I'm doing another.
Ooh. Go on. So I actually studied NLP as well.
Did you?
Yeah. So when I was coaching, I actually switched across and did NLP, so I was able to offer more for my clients.
Yeah. So did you find it interesting?
Very interesting. It's because my ex started doing it as well, so she got me into it. This is a lot of the stuff that I talk about just in day to day. Yeah. It's very interesting. I was like, oh, so a lot of NLP is common sense. That was my first literal thing about NLP. I was like, oh, I know, I use a lot of this already.
Well, it's focused on, I mean, there's so much to it because there's so many different, like you've obviously got state anchoring and you've got Swish model and you've got obviously visualization. So with NLP, they've actually brought together, so Richard Bandler and I think this guy called John Grinder in the 60s, they saw a need for more progressive type without having to see a psychologist, right? So that kind of more like forward thinking where they, you know, get down to, you know, to the patterns.
Yeah.
So it was kind of looking at your state, so looking at your state management.
Yeah.
And then, if you look at that, it's like, okay, well, we're going to use like mindfulness techniques, but understanding how, your state then affects your feelings and then behavior, and then in turn how your thoughts and your feelings affect your behavior and then your perception.
Yep.
Right? So then it's then looking at, okay, how can we change those pathways, which is more psychology based, in those neural pathways which you learnt when you were a kid, right? When you felt abandoned, and then, you're feeling like your partner, you're 35, 20s, I don't know, 40s, whatever, and you're feeling that way now, and potentially maybe your partner is or they're not, but that's coming up again, and that's because we need to change those pathways and we need to change those beliefs. So that's where it kind of begins, and that's why I do like NLP, but I think there's connotations around it where people try and oversell it, and it becomes like a scam. And I think that's where the marketing around it, or the communication around the delivery, some people are like,
Yeah.
right? So for me, I don't even feel like I'm doing NLP. Like, I just feel like I'm combining like psychotherapy, like obviously counseling, intuition, spirituality, and then coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have, like, I'm very shocked with this, but I don't necessarily like sit with someone and be like, okay, we're going to do this, and I explain it. Like I explained the NLP comms model. So do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like how you have your movie in your mind, and then you filter it through your own distortions and beliefs.
Is this where you change the colour of it as well? Make it go from grey, like have the TV screen, it's up. You have the story you're telling. We then, to shift the story, we then change. We dim the colour.
So that's one of the
yeah. Is that the one you're referring to?
So I was talking about more the basis of the communication model.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I
like
don't remember that one. Yeah.
So you've got, that's like the foundation of the communication model. It's like it's basically a diagram showing you've had all of these internal movies going on in your brain. You'll have an external event, and then it will be filtered through your perception and through your values, through your beliefs, through your programming, and through your meta maps, basically.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So it's understanding, okay, how can we, and it's not telling a client what they need to shift. It's understanding, okay, give me examples of what's happening for you and what we can work on to try and shift that story. So,
I'm with you on that.
So you did do it,
Yeah.
Because you can go, and if you did do it, I mean, you're probably using it a lot now in what you're doing.
I do. I think because when I did my NLP, it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So that's when I did it, and then I kind of, I said it's more a way of life now through conversation that I have with people.
Yeah.
And it's not sitting there going, okay, cool, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. I don't even remember half the names of the different things. I just will have a conversation. I will be listening to someone, and this goes back to where I talk about making sure I'm sharing my energy with the right people. Is listening so they can be heard, and then from that, it's, would you like a different point of view? Would you like some advice, or is this to vent? And you give them that space to be able to vent. And if they go, I'd actually really like a different point of view or some advice, it's not telling them, well, this is the problem.
100%.
It's then going around going, well, if we look at this and we look at this and we look at this and we look at this, this is a connection between here. And usually it's them finding out on their own. And that's why I thoroughly enjoy these types of therapies. Is it's not saying this is the problem. It's offering different bits that you notice, but not pinpointing something down, but then allowing them to talk through and talk and talk. And the more they talk and the more they realize, they tend to go, that's it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
So it's that's supporting someone.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I do that as well. And even I've learned to do it more with my friends now too, where, it's like, are you just wanting to vent, or are you wanting me to, to actually give you my opinion, where I think sometimes people just want to be heard.
Yep. And especially as a male, it's very hard to not be a fixer.
Yeah.
Very hard to not try to fix it. But that's been the biggest thing that I'm like, okay, this is where I'm able to really, and look, moving here, doing all this, is I've felt the tension, anxiety levels have not been what it was, to the point is now I'm a lot clearer to be able to, instead of jumping straight to a reaction and going fix, I'm able to calm, slow, and listen.
Yeah, well, that's growth, isn't it?
And that's it. I think that's been the biggest thing coming here, which has been lovely.
Because often I think when we want to constantly fix something, or we want to go in to help, you know, in different ways, and I know it from my own experience, it's because, you know, I'm getting, I don't know if it was a validation thing, but I guess I'm naturally a caring person, so I want to help people, but then looking at myself like, why do I need to feel that I need to fix this all the time?
Yeah.
Like, what am I getting from this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think when you're more present in yourself and just being able to be like, okay, does this person, what do they need right now?
Yeah.
Like that in itself is,
But you don't take on the energy as much either.
Exactly.
When you try to fix, you absorb the energy.
Exactly.
When you don't fix,
and that's where you, can become toxic.
And that's where I fucking learned to just go, cool. And I can listen, I can be there for however long it is. I'm like, cool, you're good. And then move on.